Hi, I'm Michael Caju.
And I'm Adee Caju, and you're listening to the WAG Podcast. This podcast is about health, wellness, and personal development.
Each episode is a short conversation between Adee and I on a single topic with actionable steps. We cover everything from food, mindset, fitness, and relationships.
We started WAG because of the way health and fitness changed our lives, so we hope to share a tool or two that helps you along your way.
Hey, just a quick message before we get the show started. We're reopening registration for our coach certification on October 7th. If you're someone that's had his or her life changed through nutrition and you're ready to give back, then this could be a great program for you. If you just want to learn and gain knowledge for yourself, this could be a great program for you. And whether you want to start a side hustle, a full-on business in nutrition coaching, or you just want to add this skill set to what you're already doing in your career, this is a phenomenal program. It's a 6-phase course that ranges from the fundamentals and basics of nutrition science. We go into teaching you about setting and changing macronutrient profiles, creating custom nutrition plans for people. We teach you the art and psychology of coaching, and we give you a ton of practical applications doing sample check-ins. The best part of the program is that you will be paired with a digital mentor, which is one of our top coaches that will give you feedback throughout the entire course. Registration opens on October 7th. And if you're interested, go to workingagainstgravity.com/coach-certification, or just go to workingagainstgravity.com and click the Become a Coach button. And if you're on the fence, if you've been on the fence for a while, I highly recommend you sign up at this launch because this is the last time that we will have this price. In January, when we reopen, it will be significantly more expensive. So if you're interested, check it out, workingagainstgravity.com/coach-certification. Hey, welcome to the WAG Podcast. This is Michael Caju, and today we're doing another special episode of the show where we highlight a WAG coach or staff member. Today I'm joined by one of our coaches named Jayne Smith. Jayne has been a coach for a number of years, and she's also a coach training assistant. So we have our WAG Coach Certification where people train to become nutrition coaches. And she's one of the trainers that guides people through that whole process. She's like their digital mentor. In this show, we talk all about her experience as a gymnast, which took up a very large percentage of her lifetime so far. She started at age 6 and was immediately training for about 4 hours a day. She would go on to become homeschooled, training 7 to 8 hours a day, and eventually realized her goal as a collegiate gymnast. We talk all about how that influenced her both positively as well as the challenges that exhibited for her, including the way that she developed her relationship with food. We talk about how she eventually found WAG and the biggest lessons that she learned in that process, how she became a coach. And the biggest theme throughout this whole podcast was around transitions and how to handle our fitness and nutrition when we don't have a concrete goal or when we're shifting identities. Jayne has been a very high-level athlete over and over and over in her life in gymnastics, CrossFit, and weightlifting. And each of those have been followed by periods of time where, as she's transitioning out and doesn't have a very concrete goal, she has struggled with her fitness and nutrition. And one of my favorite things about Jayne and about this podcast is how raw and vulnerable she is. She not only tells us how she struggled in the past, but she's also so open and honest about how she continues to be challenged in these areas, which I think is such a great lesson because we go through challenging times very often. And I think it's voices like Jayne's that give the rest of us permission to speak up about our own challenges. This was a huge joy for me to do and to connect with Jayne. And I think you're going to learn something super valuable out of this episode. So without further ado, please help me welcome Jayne Smith. Jayne, what's up?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited.
So I know a little bit about you. We've worked together for quite some time, but I'm really excited to get to know how you developed into the person that you are, because you're a wonderful young woman and an amazing coach. And I'm excited to kind of peek under the hood and see how you developed into the person that you are. And I know a really big part of your life was being a very high level competitive gymnast. So I thought we might start there. How did your gymnastics career start?
So I actually got started when I was 6 years old. I originally started with cheerleading because my mom was a cheerleader and my dad was a football player, and they coached cheerleading and coached football also. So I was on the sidelines doing all the cartwheels and backflips and stuff like before I was even 5 years old, me and my sisters. I know.
And your mom's like teaching you that at the house, or how did you learn how to do that?
I was watching all the girls, and me and my sister would be like, we want to try that. And we would be doing like back handsprings and stuff like on our head. And my mom would be so nervous and scared, but we would just, they didn't actually teach us any of it. We just kind of went for it. But she would actually go, I think like a couple times a month or maybe once a week, she would go to a real gymnastics facility, and I would watch those girls, and I saw that they were doing more than just tumbling. So they were on the balance beam and the uneven bars and the vault. And I just got very curious, and I really wanted to do gymnastics. So I asked my mom, I said, I want to do gymnastics. And she said, nope, you're going to do cheerleading. And I was like, oh, okay. But I was like 5. So I was like, okay, it's fine. And then my coach, my soon-to-be coach, overheard me. And she went up to my mom and said, no, I want her to do gymnastics. She was watching me flip around all over the beams and stuff. And my mom thought, oh, well, she just said that in front of my daughter, and now I don't know if I could say no. So
she probably had some words with her that you never knew about, I'm sure.
I'm sure she did, because they were friends. So she definitely, they definitely said something. But I started at 6, and yep, I really enjoyed it from there on out. And yes, that's pretty much how I got started.
Got it. So where did it go from there?
So with gymnastics, you start at a very young age if you want to be like pretty good, or if you just want to make it a serious sport. So at the time I was doing swimming and gymnastics because my sisters did swimming. I have 2 older sisters, and I was just following in their footsteps. But it gets pretty serious. So I was at practice from 4 to 8:30 at the age of 6, 7 at night.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was 4 days during the week, and then it was 12 to 5 on Saturdays. So a lot of hours. And my parents were like, you got to choose one or the other because you can't do both. There's just a lot of time commitment. Mm-hmm. And so I chose gymnastics. I was like, I didn't like the cold water. I didn't like the deep end in swimming. I was like, I'm going to choose gymnastics. Mm-hmm. So from there, we were training. I was level 4. You start like level 4, and then you move up as you progress in skills. And by the time I was in 7th grade, I realized I really wanted to make my ultimate goal to get a college scholarship. And 7th grade, so you're about 12 years old. And by 10, I knew I wanted to be a college gymnast. But I knew that I needed to make it an extra commitment if I really wanted to get like a full scholarship.
At 10 years old, you're thinking that far ahead.
Yeah,
wow.
I know. My husband is always like, I just don't understand how you knew that. And I think that's because we had a lot of good influence in our gym, and people were going off to college every single year as seniors. And I saw that, and I saw what they were doing, and I was like, I could do that. So they were where I am at my age, and if I just keep working hard, I'll get there too. Looking back, it definitely seems like, I don't know how I thought like that. I guess it's very young, but at 10, I was like, I know, I'm going to do it. So in 7th grade, I decided to homeschool, and I was doing a lot of hours in the gym. I was working out from 8:30 to like 1 o'clock. And then we'd school from like 1 to 3 at the gym. And then we'd work out again from 3 to 7. And that was if we finished our assignments and everything. Sometimes we'd be there until later if we didn't get what we were supposed to get done.
Wow.
Yeah, just a lot. And yeah, we drove. I mean, my parents, they were definitely a huge part of this, and I couldn't have done it without them. But my gym was 45 minutes away, and so they drove me there and back every single day. And yeah, it was just a very huge part of my life. And I homeschooled from 7th grade through 12th grade, and then wound up going to college for gymnastics.
Where'd you go to school again?
Rutgers University in New Jersey.
Which is a big school. It's a huge
Yeah.
university. Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you.
Wow. I had no idea it was that much training.
There's a lot of training. Yeah. We'd go to like our events twice in one day. Yeah. If you were having a bad day, it was just, you were on those events for hours. It was rough. Just like making beam routines and bar routines and learning new skills and the conditioning. So yes, it was commitment.
What was the highlight of your career?
I would say that at a young age, there's this program called TOPS, which is Talent Opportunity Program. And you go through a conditioning test, and then you go through a skill test once you pass. If you pass the conditioning test, you get to move forward and do these skill tests at the National Training Center with like where the Olympians train. And then from there, you qualify just for a camp where you actually get to train with the national coaches. And you only get to have that opportunity from the years of 9, 10, and 11 years old. So it's very young. And I was able to do that as a 10-year-old and an 11-year-old. And that was a pretty cool experience. But as I got older, making it to level 10 nationals and being a part of the national team was definitely one of the things that I worked hard for a long time. And it was cool to see everything line up and get there right in my senior year of high school. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's so
and then,
rad.
Of course, getting a scholership. But
of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. What does it feel like to have hit your peak in life at age 10? I'm just kidding. Well,
it's been downhill since.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. It's been good.
So, looking back on that experience, how would you say that has shaped you? And I'm sure we could talk about this for hours, but what really sticks out in your mind when you think about how that experience shaped you for better or for worse?
I feel like gymnastics is definitely a sport where discipline and dedication and perseverance are super important. It's a very, and it might be a little bit more changed now, but it's a very disciplined sport from the coaches too. So like there's no crying. If we cried, we got kicked out of practice. There's no talking. Like you can't talk. If I remember one time, me and my friend were talking, we talked a lot, and it's what got us in trouble the most. And we had to go do like 500 leg lifts on the bar, which are like toes to bar.
Wow.
And just because we were giggling, and then a few other times had to do with like push-ups and hundreds of push-ups and just having to count out loud. But those kind of things, I think they wanted to break us. And me and my friend were very strong-willed at that point. So they weren't, they weren't going to break us in that way. But it's definitely very disciplined. So you learn how to be disciplined through that sport. And you're dedicating your whole day and time and even school, to that sport growing up. So you learn how to sacrifice in other areas, such as like making sure your nutrition is on point, or making sure you're going to bed. My coach told me I had to be in bed by 9:30. I was in bed by 9:30. Like there was no arguing. There you don't have a lot of like social obligations, so I couldn't like go skiing or ice skating or things that would put like potentially injure myself. So learning how to sacrifice and dedicate myself to the sport was huge. It definitely hugely shaped me moving forward into college and post college, and it taught me that if I work really hard, though, that I can achieve the goal that I set my mind to. So that was great.
Oh, that's awesome. Is there anything else that sticks out?
Yes, I would say that with nutrition, my mindset around nutrition definitely it molded myself moving forward. But I think that that was something I didn't realize until after college or while I was in college. There were times when it came to nutrition that and our weight and just how we looked in a leotard that our coach would weigh us every single day. And she would, if our weight was up, she would tell us we had to lose a certain amount of weight before the weekend and just things like that. Definitely, was one of the lucky ones. I didn't come out of like gymnastics with an eating disorder or anything, which was great, but it definitely changes your perspective on the way food looks and not learning how to fuel yourself as well because you're worried about how you look in a leotard. So things like that for sure were I would say a little bit of a negative aspect, but that it led me to where I am today. So I can't be completely mad about it.
Sure. So say a little bit more about this. When you're competing, obviously you have to be really dialed in with your nutrition, and whether or not that's best for kids is not the scope of this discussion. So we'll just go to what it was like for you in college and transitioning out. How was that transition for you in terms of your relationship with food?
So I guess when I got to college, I was always trying to figure out how to fuel my body. I knew what foods were bad and what foods were good, or what I labeled as bad and good, because that's not really a thing anymore since I've learned post-college. But I never knew how to fuel myself for the amount of training that I was doing, mainly because in gymnastics, you are doing a lot of strength work, but you're not burning as many calories as someone might think you are. For example, if you're doing a floor routine, that's 1.5 minutes. So it's in 1.5 minutes of tumbling and jumping, basically sprinting. After you're done with that floor routine, you probably in a competition, you won't do anything for at least another hour or 45 minutes. And your next event is going to be a 30-second bar routine. So our training was very long hours, but we would do a tumbling pass that was maybe 5 seconds long, and then we'd rest. So a lot of the registered dietitians in the college were kind of trying to help figure that all out and give us advice in that sense. But they'd never really understood exactly what we did. So I would always just be researching on my own, trying to figure that out. I would always fail. And I just kept gaining more and more weight when I was in college, actually, and active. And then when you also go to college, you're working out, you're training for 3 hours and you're doing strength work for 1 hour. Now, before I was doing 8 hours of training every day. And so making that transition was pretty tough.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was definitely a battle, but definitely tried to get through it and just keep learning. I wish that we had something like WAG when I was in college, but there wasn't anything available. So that's why I try to give back and help all the clients that I can, and especially athletes and college athletes through that all as well.
Mm-hmm. So what led you to eventually find WAG?
So after college, I gained, in the process, I was there and I gained the freshman 15. My senior year, I medically withdrew from gymnastics because I was doing some skill on the bars, and I wound up hitting my feet on the low bar as I was releasing for a dismount, and I messed up my timing and I landed on my neck.
Oh.
And it was
Oh.
not a great moment. I had a bad concussion for a long time, but everything else was okay, thankfully. So I medically retired my senior year, and I wound up getting ankle reconstruction surgery as well. You definitely don't walk away from the sport without a lot of
Yeah, I've gathered that.
injuries.
It's so violent on your joints.
Yeah, from a young age, it is, but you get a high pain tolerance from it.
Mm-hmm.
So between those two things, stopping gymnastics, having a concussion that lasted a long time and you can't do any activity with that, and then getting ankle reconstruction surgery a couple months later, I was totally inactive. Like I didn't even want to get in the gym at that point. I was 22. Been doing something every day since I was 6 years old. I didn't even want to get on the elliptical. I was on elliptical a lot. So I took that opportunity to just rest. And while resting, I still didn't know how to eat properly. And I wasn't eating a bunch of junk or anything, but I just wasn't sure how to feel my body during that time. So in all, I wound up gaining like 30 pounds over from my freshman year till I graduated.
Mm-hmm.
So I gained like another 15.
What was that like for you psychologically?
Oh, it was so tough. It was so tough. Growing up, when you're a gymnast, you are the gymnast. So you're lean, like you have a six pack. You're always in a leotard. So like you basically look like you work out, and it's just something like people would always be like, I want to look like you and I want to be as lean as you, you know? So in college, I just struggled so hard with it. I would wear baggy shirts. I would wear, loose shorts, sweatpants, sweatshirts, anything to like hide my body because I was very ashamed of it. It was very hard mentally, but I knew that once I was healed and once gymnastics was over and I could like really just find the workout training that worked for me. Because during gymnastics, you're kind of limited. Like you have to do what they tell you to, and you don't want to do anything that might risk injury.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't going to try these new things on my own, like CrossFit or something, when I had the potential of getting hurt. And so I was optimistic, but I was very discouraged with how far I let myself go and how far I had to go to get back to it. So all of that to say that I wound up, my sister started CrossFit, and she was like, hey, like you have to try this with me. I think you'd really like it. And I was like, oh, I've heard of it. I was like, okay, I'll go try it. And so I went and I tried it and I loved it because I loved being challenged. I loved sweating and breathing hard and feeling like I was dying.
You were probably pretty good at it immediately, I'm sure.
I was, but after so long of not doing a lot of gymnastics, I lost things like a basic pull-up, which is something I was doing since I was 6, like, and they knew I was a gymnast. So that was another thing I had to live up to, like, oh, you'll get it back. I'm sure you'll be really good at it. And I was like, okay, yeah. But
I don't feel like it right now.
Yeah. Like I'm also like, I was like sitting at 185. Like it was a lot. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. But it's going to take a while. But it did, like I put in the work and it was starting to pay off big time. I was just going hard every day and I started learning more about how like the paleo lifestyle, I guess you could say. I was learning more about CrossFit way of eating. And then eventually my coach went to a mastermind in California. And I think you and Adi were there.
Who was your coach?
Eric Bland.
Okay.
It was in 2015. I think.
Yeah, the one where me and Adi met.
Yeah, which I found out later on. I was like, that's so interesting. So yeah, he went to that and he came back and he said, I think Travis Mash was there, or I don't know if he was there. He heard about it.
He was there,
and
yeah.
He said, he was? Okay. He said, you're like, this is how I think you're going to get to the next level is by focusing on weightlifting, because we were working towards regionals. And I did wound up getting like, I think my best finish was like 90 something in a few of the workouts in the region. So we were trying to figure out how I can get better to get to actual regionals before they changed all the rules and, not a lot of people went. So I started looking up his programming, and that's when I stumbled upon the Eat What You Want, Lift What You Want program. And that was the weightlifting programming by Travis and the nutrition coaching by WAG. So that was in 2015. And me and my then boyfriend, but now husband, both did the program, and we couldn't believe, like, I thought that when I first got the macros, that he gave me so many carbs, and I was like, this is not going to work. You are making me eat so much. I didn't say that because I was very much a what my coach says I'll do kind of person.
I'm gathering that. I'm gathering it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very like all or nothing. I was like, I'm paying for it. I don't know. This person knows. I'm going to give it my all. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least we tried. So, yeah, it gave me like 200 grams of carbs, which now doesn't seem like as much, but then I don't know how much I was getting. It wasn't 200. And I was like, hey, more food, I'm going to eat it. So I was doing all of that, and I saw great results. And I realized that it was more about fueling my body for workouts as opposed to trying to change my body composition. When I was fueling my body for performance, I had a mindset change. My body changed because of that mindset change. My training increased. Like my performance was so much better. My strength was more. I was just amazed. So that's how I found WAG.
That's so cool. What was your biggest lesson during that time when you first found WAG?
Basically that carbs were fueling my workouts. And I think at the time I thought fats were fueling my workouts. And I think that was common coming from a paleo background. And there's definitely nothing wrong with that. I mean, you have to find what works for you. But it wasn't what worked for my body. And I was so heavily concentrated on eating more fats and limiting my carb intake when I was training for an hour and a half a day or more. And so that was definitely a big thing. It was more about fueling myself. That was the biggest lesson I learned, instead of focusing on the scale, because I wound up only losing 1 to 2 pounds in like 4 months, but my body composition changed so much and my strength went up. So it was definitely a wake up call, I would say.
Yeah, that's massive. I think at this point, the jig is up a little bit. Like, I think the functional fitness and CrossFit community understand what you're saying. I was telling Taylor this a couple of days ago. My sister sent me a screenshot of an Instagram post that this restaurant made from where I grew up, like super, super small town. And it had like steak and asparagus and something else. And it says, and like maybe potato, and it said macros friendly meal. Macros.
Macros.
So everybody knows about the macros. They don't know quite how to say it, but people are coming around to it.
That's too funny. Yeah, because usually it's low calorie or something, right?
Yes.
But
they honestly, they might think that it means the same exact thing.
Right, yeah. That's too funny, but it is a lot more common than it was back in the day.
So what then led you to want to become a coach?
So it's funny because I was always very passionate about nutrition, like I said, in gymnastics and in college, just trying to figure out how to eat healthier, how to have more energy. I never had energy in my training working out 8 hours a day before college, and I didn't understand. I was very malnourished, but again, I wasn't educated on how to stay lean and eat enough. So I would just be Googling everything all of the time. And when I was in college, I remember reading something that said, if you find your passion, like think of what you do during your time off or in your free time. Like, what do you do the most? And I was like, well, I feel like I Google nutrition things all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But in my head, I was like, I'm like 175 pounds, 180 pounds. I was overweight. I was a gymnast. And who was going to take advice from me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So felt like I knew a lot, but I didn't know enough. But then in the back of my head, I was also like, I don't look the part and I don't think that anyone would take advice from me. So I realized that when I was finally going through WAG and felt really great and almost like, I guess, quote unquote, achieved my goals in some sort where I got my health back after college, I just wanted to pay it forward. I felt like I had a lot of experience going through someone who was fit to someone who, you know, lost, their sport per se, because I medically retired and didn't really choose to retire, and then gained a lot of weight. And then, I don't know, I figured it out and lost the weight and tried to maintain the weight. So I figured a lot of people I could relate to, and I just wanted to get them to the point where they were able to get their questions answered, because I wasn't, and for so long, and I just wanted to be able to help answer those questions and not necessarily see them lose a bunch of weight, but see that mindset like change of like, I get it. Like, I understand that food is fuel and I want to feel my best and the rest will follow. So that's when I decided to reach out and ask if WAG was hiring.
Yeah. So even if people can't completely relate with being a super high level athlete and then not being one, like is your story, I think everyone listening can relate to at some point feeling or right now feeling like really uncomfortable in their bodies and trying really hard and struggling. Like you tried for years and struggled against it, and then you found what works for you and you stuck with it. And that is just such a huge example of what's possible for people.
Right. And I also feel like it's a very common misconception that even when you figure it out, or quote unquote figure it out, that you will have this answer for the rest of your life. Like, you will have this one set of macros and you've got it done. Like, it's figured out. And the more that you are involved in the like coaching aspect of it, and then as a client myself, or just like in my own journey, I realized that is not the case. It's not black and white, and we need to continue to adapt our nutrition to our season of life, or just depending on where we are on our journey. And that's something I really try to explain to my clients, because I've actually was very lean, and then I thought I had it figured out, like I could stay with my cut macros forever, and had no idea that I needed to eat more than what I ate to lose weight. And I wound up gaining like 10 to 15 pounds back over time. And I just had no idea what was happening. And then I had to figure out how to get back down and figure out how to maintain. And it's an ever going on journey. Like, it just goes on and on.
Yes. I love that you said that. I'm starting to think about it this way. Like, it's not our weight and our body composition and our nutrition are not, there's no destination. There's no like, when I lose this 15 pounds, then I'll be happy. That's the wrong way of thinking about it. It's a lifelong thing. It's an active process. We're always going to be eating. And so it's always going to be changing. Right. And so all we have to do is just focus on our habits and our behaviors right now. And if those are in line, the outcomes will probably be pretty pleased with them. But focusing on only the outcomes or overly focusing on them, it messes with our abilities to stay consistent with our habits and our behaviors that help us be healthy.
Right. Yes. We all think that we can, keep our meals structured and like only have our nutrition in the main focus to be our health. But like you said, it's our habits and our behavior. So if we're not taking care of ourselves by doing self-care or sleeping 8 hours a night or putting exercise as a priority, if that's something that helps keep you accountable and feeling good, the rest is just going to fall out of place. It's not something that you can only work on one thing and think that's going to be the answer forever and then let everything else just fluctuate or fall apart. So that is great because you always have to eat. That's a good thing right there, and you have to figure out how to eat in every situation in your life, whether you're 20, 30, 40, a mom, pregnant, postpartum, dad, any of that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
So you're going through another big transition. You're starting to transition out of being a competitive weightlifter. So you have a lot of experience doing this, like being super competitive and then moving on. What's this process been like for you?
This one probably has been the toughest process because when I switched from CrossFit to just weightlifting, I did so mainly because everyone was telling me that I'd be good at it. And I had fun with it, but I wouldn't say it was as fulfilling to me as CrossFit, because just like gymnastics, you can always do something different. There's so many different skills. It's like if you didn't like one thing one day, you can work on something else that day. Or, I also liked being out of breath and dying after workouts. And so with weightlifting, you only do snatch, clean and jerk, and then some accessory work like push presses and squats and stuff. And so it wasn't as fulfilling, but someone told me that I'd be really good at it. So I decided to go for it and give it my all, because that's how it goes.
What you do, yep.
So that's what I do.
10 years later.
Yeah, right. And so I actually did really well. I qualified for American Open, my first meet. I think my husband was like, "Oh my gosh, you qualified for American Open. That's awesome." And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. Like, I just went out there and lifted. Like, it was fun. And so I just kept I just worked to get stronger and stronger. My goal was to get to nationals. I wound up qualifying for nationals. And by the time I got there, I feel like it's just like everyone says, you get there and you've worked hard for this goal. And then it just wasn't as fulfilling as I wanted it to be. I don't know what it was. So I felt like I was burnt out. My body was hurting so much, just from, past injuries. And it just wasn't, I was going through some stress a little bit. So it just was taking a toll on me. Mm-hmm. So I wound up taking a break and just kind of did what my body wanted to do. But during that time, I was like, I don't know what to do. I've been told what to do for working out and with goals and stuff for so long. I just had no idea what to do. I think I was doing 400-meter walking lunges for every day. I was like, I don't know. I was like, this really hurts. I'm just going to do this. And that was it. And so I did that for a while. And then I was like, you know what? I'm over it. I'm going back to weightlifting. So I went back to weightlifting.
That's a great way to convince yourself to get back into something you don't like anymore. Just do something really terrible and boring.
Yeah. Go run a marathon and then you'll appreciate the sport again.
Anything, yeah.
I have thought about that actually. So I went back to weightlifting and did the comeback thing. I was like, I'm on it. And then I wound up competing and I was like, I just don't get excited to compete. I would hit a PR and it just wouldn't, I don't know what, there must be something wrong with me. It just wouldn't be satisfying. Not getting a PR or getting a new skill in gymnastics or getting a PR in a workout that you really worked hard for, something like that. But anyway.
Well, I mean, if I got a PR in dart throwing or something like that, I hit a couple of bullseyes, I'd be cool, but I don't really care. It just sounds like you didn't care. You didn't care about it anymore.
Which sounds terrible. But I guess I just didn't have a why because someone told me I'd be good at it, and that's why I did it. And so I wound up like just being like, okay, listen, I've been a competitor my whole life, and I just feel like I'm over making sure I do this XYZ 4 to 5 days a week and putting training as a priority. I was like, I'm 20, I think I was 27, and I was just like, I want to see what life is like when I don't put like a sport as a priority, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I wound up taking a break again. And then I went back to CrossFit and it felt good. But then people got in my ear when I started doing good at CrossFit again. And they were like, your lifts are looking good. I went back in again. Could you believe it? I don't know.
It's like one of those relationships where you just keep breaking up with each other and you know you're not good for one another anymore.
I know. My husband was like, oh, he's like, if it's what you want, you know, like, but like in the back of his head, he was like, oh my gosh, not again, please.
Yeah.
And so I did. I gave it another try again. And this time, I think I jumped into things a little too fast. I did really well. Actually, my first meet, it was the first time I ever went 6 for 6. I was one of those people that would like only make one of each lift, and it was like when it counted because I liked the pressure. And I went 6 for 6, and then I was trying to, you know, keep it going, and I just kept getting these like tweaks in my back, and then tweaks in my shoulder, and tweaks in my trap. And after a while, I was like, it's just, I don't know if it's worth it to be in constant pain, and I just finally need to like let it go. And I feel like, and so that was back in like just recently, like November.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing good, staying away.
Nice.
Corona helps. No.
Yes.
No, I've been good. I've been trying to figure out how to get my body healthy again and just feel good and figure out how to move because I want to move and I want to feel good, not because I feel like I have to. And not because I want to like lose weight or keep my weight down or any of those reasons. I had to figure out how to work out for life. And that was really hard because it just took me a long time to get to a point where I wasn't like being told to work out. And so I just didn't know how to get myself to do that. And then the nutrition aspect of it steps into play. So when you're a weightlifter, you're always watching your weight. And it's just a big part of the sport, obviously. And you need to make sure that you're eating well to get yourself fueled while staying within a certain range of weight. And if there's one thing I did learn, it's that the scale is definitely not a priority because I've looked just as lean at 150 as I did at like 160. Just because when you focus on putting on muscle, you're gonna put on muscle, mm-hmm. and the scale is not like going to dictate whether you are overweight or underweight or anything. So when it came to nutrition, that's where I started to really struggle because I have a very like all or nothing mentality when it comes to tracking, and I couldn't find balance. So I would be very strict 6 to 8 weeks out from a meet, and I would dial it in and be on point with my weight, no problem. And then after the meet, I would just like not pay attention, like eat more, and I would gain, and I'd fluctuate like that throughout my whole weightlifting career. It was something I definitely struggled with. So when I came out of weightlifting, I decided to focus on intuitive eating. And this is another weightlifting scenario where I knew what I needed to do when I tracked. And so I would want to track, and then I would start tracking, and then I'd go for the all or nothing mentality and get a little crazy with it. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to track. And then I wouldn't track. And then I'd be like, wait, I'll dial it in for a few weeks, and then I'll get back to it. But eventually I did stop tracking, and it's something that's an ongoing battle. I definitely feel like I do better when I don't track, just because I really have to get in tune with my body and figure out why I'm doing it. Just like with exercise, I am doing it because I want to live a healthy life and I want to feel good, not because I need to be a certain weight on the scale or have X% body fat or something like that. So that transition definitely is still happening and it's going really well so far. But there are some ups and downs that come with that. So yeah, it's been interesting.
I so appreciate your vulnerability. Like you're just so open about not only what you've gone through, but what you continue to go through. And I just want to honor and acknowledge, like, one, it takes bravery, and two, every person can relate to you in some way. You know, like whether that's in nutrition or not, we're all going through something like all the time. And the bravery that it takes to acknowledge that that's happening currently, it takes a lot. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So I also want to acknowledge that for you, intuitive eating works best, I think partly because you've spent so much time tracking and paying such close attention to what you're putting in your body. And at this point, you know, like you can eyeball and estimate what your body really needs. And like the next level of evolution is, okay, like now I know how many grams of each type of macronutrient I need per day. I know what that looks like out in the real world. Now I just need to like really feel into what my body needs on a day-to-day basis because it's probably changing.
Yes, for sure. I was tracking on and off for 5 years, so I could definitely look at anything and say, like, I can give you the macros on so many things. But I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't track. And I always tell my clients whenever they feel burnt out, maybe from tracking, or maybe they're feeling a little bit like they don't know what to do next. I tell them that tracking is a tool. It doesn't have to be forever, but there are people out there who love to track every single day, every single macro, and they feel really great doing that. But it is definitely a tool. And if you utilize it correctly, you can figure out, like, you'll learn what a serving size is, and you'll learn maybe your body does need more carbs and more food than you think it does. Maybe you were very surprised when you first weighed one serving of peanut butter, because I know that I almost cried when I first weighed
it's a disappointing
a serving of
amount.
Peanut butter.
It's a very disappointing amount.
I was like, you're saying that 2 heaping tablespoons is not a serving size with the big spoon in my drawer? Yeah, it's very humbling. But yeah, it's not. And then I tell them that it's not forever either, and that you can find balance. There's a time and a place for tracking. And I think that it is such a great tool that can really just set you up for so many great habits in the future.
Mm-hmm.
It just helps you become more aware of the quality of food that you're getting in, maybe your food choices when eating out. Maybe it gives you some answers as to what might be hurting your stomach or causing you to be more inflamed, and so many things. So yes, intuitive eating, it works for me now, but it definitely took a lot of years of tracking and figuring out what works best for me to get here.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to say that it's like I do intuitively eat and listen to my body, but I also have an idea of what like a day of food looks like for myself. And when life happens, I know how to navigate it, like travels, social situations, etc. But like on a normal day, yeah, I still follow the same sort of guidelines that I did when I was tracking, just eating more or less depending on how I feel.
I love that. A couple of quotes come to mind when we're talking about this. One is, what gets measured gets managed. So by getting really into the details of what we eat, we learn how to grow awareness and actually manage our nutrition and our body composition. The other one is, you got to learn the rules before you break the rules. So intuitive eating is like a level 5, and tracking is somewhere maybe a level 2 or 3. And like most things, like most progressions, we don't want to skip steps. We want to master all of the steps. And then when we when we go to the higher level, we transcend and include. We don't throw them away. We include them, but we also have a higher level of perspective, and we don't always have to use the tools that got us to the place in the first place.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And I also like to tell people that it's also to help you make sure you're fueling yourself enough. So many people think that tracking is just to lose weight or lose body fat or whatever it might be. And they might be embarrassed to tell their friends that they are tracking. But if they tell them that they're trying to make sure that they're eating enough and enough of the right foods that help them feel their best, that just changes the whole perspective of it from someone else's that's just like viewing someone weighing their food and not understanding why. So yeah, just goes off of what we're saying.
So in closing, is there one piece of wisdom or advice that you'd like to leave the listeners with?
Yes, I guess in most things, consistency is definitely key. And you build on that consistency from day to day. So it's not that you have to be perfect every day. It's just that you have to try one new thing each day and build on that every single day. You put one foot in front of the other and just keep moving forward. Another thing too is sometimes we all try to have a very close-up perspective on our lives and whatever we're going through. But if we take a minute to just take a step back and see like the bird's eye view, we can really see a lot that's going on. Example, if you're focusing on your nutrition and you're only seeing nutrition, but you take a step back and you see that there's stress in your life and you're not sleeping well and your water intake's off or exercise, just remembering that there's a lot more to the story than what we're only focusing on. So that's that.
That's great advice. And I'm feeling very quotey today. Another one that comes up is, I think someone named Tim Urban said something like this. An extraordinary feat is just what a series of mundane tasks looks like when you zoom out. Yeah. So it's basically like any great thing that ever happens in life is just like, you're just laying brick after brick after brick of just being consistent and putting and doing these mundane tasks like tracking your nutrition, getting enough water, sleeping enough. And when you do that for long enough, you can accomplish something pretty great.
Yes. And you don't see it happen right away. You got to look at the whole journey and see that, oh, it's been happening while doing the same thing every day or building on something every day. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's great.
Awesome, Jayne. This was a blast. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it.
All right. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too.
Thanks for joining us. Stay in touch by signing up for our newsletter at workingagainstgravity.com or on Instagram at workingagainstgravity.
And don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes, leave us a 5-star review, and refer a friend. We'll be back next week with another episode. Talk to you then.